now you know my favorite heists in Payday 2. Now I'm gonna do the top 10 worst heists in Payday 2. And the rules are essentially the same. This is based on my opinion, and it's gonna be only on PS4 with these heists. Now, the more difficult about to make this video is not in terms of the gameplay itself or trying to get the volume as I could. I mean, I will lower volume for this one, for today's video because, well, my voice sounds more important than the actual game volume. And also, the editing is not hard either. The only challenging part is trying to come up with 10 heists that I despise, which I don't think I shouldn't even make a top 10 video. Instead, I should make a top 5, but since I did a top 10 favorite heists, it should only be fair I should make a top 10 worst heists in Payday 2. Now, I'm not saying every heist I put on this in this video are bad, which they're not. It's just that it's just certain the way the map layout is, certain gimmicks, and also certain objectives just kinda throws all the logic out of the window. So, enough said. Let's get into the list. Alright, starting at number 10, it is going to be Alaskan Deal. And the reason for it is pretty straightforward. It's mainly for the DSOD, in that they do way too much damage. When you compare it to Panic Room or a few heists, it just really falls from grace because of how much damage they do. Like right here, by one dude that is not even a special unit, that almost downs me quickly. And honestly, I hate this so much. I feel like they add up the modifiers to this and ramp this up to 11. When I compare it to, well, like I said, Panic Room, I'm completely fine. I had no struggle with this, and this is the same stoic build. It's just really ridiculous. Also, the objectives, well, let's get with the map first. That is way too small for the map to be. It is way too small for something that's so action-packed. If it was a much bigger map, I actually would be okay with. Another thing I don't like is the objectives. They're mostly you just go back and forth between the two maps to reach the other side, just for freeing the captain's crew, and then getting the saw, then you have to run to the other side, free the captain, then you have to connect the host to the ship, which you have to go more backtrack forward and more at the back. And it's a really damn shame too, because it's one of those heists that I like snow levels, but most of the objectives definitely turns me off when playing this heist. Also, the objectives when it comes to, oh boy, how am I supposed to say this? The objectives of defending the freaking pumps. I hate it so much. Especially when the captain keeps saying the same thing, like, something wrong with pump, something wrong with host. And I would say there's something wrong with heist. Well, this heist in particular. And it's just feels like I'm playing on a new difficulty level. Like Death Threat or something. Like this map has some vendetta against me. Coming up to number 9 is going to be the Bomb Forest. One of the two heists from the Bomb Heist DLC. Now this one, you mostly get the bomb forest if you go for the storyline, as in if for some reason the Payday gang are too lazy to get the bombs in the dockyard, then the bombs will be moved onto a train where the Bane will actually blow it up in a forest, but sadly the explosion caught a lot of attention, so a Bane basically breaks stealth. Thanks a lot, Bane, even though you're supposed to be a criminal mastermind. Our eyes and ears. I guess you don't have the brains for it. Shouldn't even be called Bane anyway. So anyways, now, I know a lot of people think this should be higher on the list, and I know people hate this map due to how big and open this is, but at the same time, it's actually refreshing because most heists we have are a lot of close quarters and medium range. At least having long range makes it even better. At least it's spiced up a bit with the gameplay. And of course, you can actually abuse this little jumping mechanic I'm doing. But I have to say there are a few things that is wrong with this heist other than slipping off, is the way how pre-planning works with this. With pre-planning, well, in terms of the escape plan for it, it's definitely a death sentence, no pun intended, for sticking with the default escape being the boat escape. Not only that, you had to carry heavy bags of loot. You also need to take us to the zipline one at a time. The other pre-plan you can do is using the airplane escape, but that requires a lot more objectives and just about the same length as taking it to the boats escape. Not only that, you also need to require to use a saw, or mostly a chainsaw, to cut down the trees to make a runway for your plane, or for the pilot. And it's not that fun, especially when you've been shooting by hundreds of cops. So the best option is also the most expensive favors in pre-planning. It is the helicopter escape. But unfortunately, you had to wait for it to arrive, so you're gonna wait around for a while. As for the objective itself, basically the whole core thing is basically counterfeit, but in a open field, where your objective is fill the train car with water so you don't explode any content inside. There are two options you can do this. If the vault wagon is basically, or is way too far away from the river, you can have to wait for a helicopter to drop in a big water tank to fill it up. But he had to do a couple runs to fill the whole thing, so it takes you, what, 2 to 3 passes to do it? But if you get the train car in next to the river, which you can have to do a pump, and you can do this in one go, and there's an achievement for doing this as well. However, the problem is doing that is you had to make sure they don't take off the hose, which is basically similar to Alaskan Deal, where you had to put the pipe in and then you're ready to work with it. Also didn't help that snipers in this map are really hard to find, especially if you don't have some type of scope or high value target ace. Any way to highlight the snipers. Sometimes I got help from the AI since they have way better range than a player with high range skills. So that's all I pretty much have to say about this heist. It's just, I would like the openness of the field, but the objectives around it for waiting a lot, as well for escaping, it feels very dull and doesn't work well. I mean, after all, I think Dockyard is definitely the best heist out of the two of the Bomb Heist DLC. Coming at number 8 is going to be Brooklyn Bank. What? A bank heist in a worse list? Now, don't get me wrong, Brooklyn Bank is really enjoyable when it comes to loud, but other than that, it's just pretty damn... The execution, however, is poorly done and honestly doesn't feel special. Especially that you can't even stealth a bank heist. Who would have thought that you can't even stealth a bank heist? I mean, of all the bank heists they added in this game, you have both tactics. both loud and stealth that can be very enjoyable in both ways. However, if you put one tactic only for one of a random bank, it really kills the more identity, but also the what made it so good in the first place. I have no fun with it when it comes to dealing with DSOD, and of course the problem I have, just like Alaskan deal, for some reason they do a lot of damage as opposed to what they were on few heists. One thing I also, at least I try to give them more props to for trying to do a little more different, is the way you handle the approach, such as how you deal with the objectives. To get inside the bank, or basically inside the employee's office, you're going to need to either basically use a glass cutter to actually cut through the floor and place some C4 around it. Or you could just use a saw and open the door like this, which I'm doing here, and you can actually open the button to reach the other side. With the cutter, you're going to need to open it like this, which you normally drop down here. And the same thing when it comes to opening a vault. You had to do two objectives this time. There's two ways you can do this. One with a thermite trick, with the thermite drill, which is essentially the same thing as bank heist. Or probably the worst variation, using the winch part, which is actually absolutely worse. And the one thing I hate about it is that it's not really much about pre-planning. This could have been well with a pre-planning in the first place. But of course, I think Locke doesn't really have any experience with pre-planning until he actually got the balls to do it for border crossing, and then later on in the Slick Road heist. And this is basically the easiest trick to do, but if you get the winch part, you just have to restart. And one thing I just don't like is that, for some reason, the bots here demolish anything in their path. Even a minigun dozer they have basically trouble with. It's just, and why I'm sorry hitting it so much, even though you get so many good tactics you can do, which adds replay value, and you get a lot of loot. The one thing that really leaves a big sour to taste with this heist is the storyline. The whole point we rob and going to this bank is to steal a medallion, which is the primary goal. And it's so cringy to hear Locke says that the golds are only our secondaries. It really hurts the inside with me, because I always love to do shit when I'm playing a heist and robbing a bank. I expect to get all the loot. I expect to go for all the money and the gold, because that's our main objective. But now that the gold is not the main objective for this particular bank, I feel depressed that we actually lost the meaning why we're here in the first place. I know this is the whole point of a story for the whole missing Bane trilogy, but honestly, I just really hate the fact that stories are just not good for arcade shooters, which I think to make a story-wise for a video game, it's kind of best reserve it for single player games and not some sort of arcade shooter, because it makes you ruin out of ideas for your next game, for either next updates or for your sequel. Coming for number 7 is going to be the Alesso heist. And of course, now in terms of it still feels weird that it's just so random that Overkill has put this heist in for a random, I don't know, like a Swedish, I don't know, music or musician. I have no clue. After all, only about people who live outside. I bet everyone who lives outside of Sweden will only know Alesso because of this heist. But let's talk about the heist itself, in terms of the objectives. First of all, I do like the colors for this heist. I think it's really cool how different. It kind of reminds me I'm playing Black Ops 2 with the whole near future setting in 2025. But the problem is the way how the map layout is, especially when you're trying to do it in stealth, which stealth is probably the better option because stealth has less objectives to do than loud, and they both have this basically the exact same objectives of locate the closet, find the explosive, then you can't target the crowd because the explosion will alert the crowd. But if it goes loud, why do we need to alert the crowd in the first place? It just doesn't make sense for terms of logic. I mean, wouldn't it make our jobs a lot easier too? Also, the Insider Man does a really crappy job of having closet marked with an X. Wouldn't it be simple to place an X with 5 C4s in one room? It would make it so much easier, but of course this would make the gameplay much more slower and less interesting and less RNG for overkill side. I also don't like the fact that there's only one way to get up to the second floor, which is these balconies right here, and you have to take the stairs all the time. It's just really ridiculous. I wish there was another way up here, like maybe by another pre-planning, such as maybe the source of maybe getting a ladder or something else, maybe a scissor lift. That would be kind of cool to have. And also another thing I just don't like is, I'm not really sure, but it's just the guards patrol. The guards patrol is so annoying, mainly just because they have never got a goddamn mind of which way they want to go next. And they just don't stay in for a couple of seconds, and they just move out and they go back to the spot. They just go back and forward, and it's really time consuming. But in most cases, it's just not that very enjoyable of a heist. And that's mostly I have a thing with this heist goes, and probably just didn't help that the logic just doesn't make sense, and the objectives are just the same, except the loud is much more longer. And honestly, I would think this would be better off if this was a stealth-only heist. Coming at number 6 is going to be Heat Street. So if I had to put one classic on the list that I really hate the most from Payday to Heist, I'm really torn between Green Bridge and Heat Street, as they're both very similar in terms of escorting, but Heat Street definitely basically is the rotten apple between the two because of how big the heist is. In terms of running towards the whole thing and basically fight your way with the cops in the street, literally, it's no easy street. And it doesn't help that it's just such a slow build-up with the heist, especially in my eyes. I think the police should never even begin until you actually reach Matt, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So even if you take your sweet ass time, it's actually punishing if you take your time, which hurts the player's flow. And it's just not that fun. What also didn't help is the way there's so many civilians that is just running around with their head cut off like a chicken. It's just so annoying to deal with, especially if you get in custody and your teammate just goes down, or basically go in custody and you kill so many civilians. You are gotta be putting a timeout, and it's definitely no 5 minutes or 5 minutes as I used to call it when you put a timeout. Hell, we even have a chocolate bar that says timeout. Also, the fact that at the end of the goal, it is so bad. I also don't like the thing how the escort works is so awful, and at the end, especially if a SWAT turret pinned down when you're trying to extract, you can't do it. Just because there's just too many shit that you can do, and you have really no control over that. I hate the fact that if a game takes away your control or map control, you're basically guaranteed to lose. And it's not that fun if you're getting pinned down by thousands of cops for no particular reason. And as for the escort itself, it's probably one of the most annoying objectives, and I think a lot of people are starting to hate the escorts badly in any game genre. They could easily do it much more better, just like in White Xmas, the drunken Santa can actually escort on his own without needing the help of a player. Of course, all you had to do was just shout his ass to get his lazy ass off the ground, and he's just wandering on his own. However, with this, you had to stick with him close by. And of course, you don't have to constantly shout the dude to keep move up. It does not speed the process, even though may have inspired basic. It only affects the player, not the AI, if you want to make them move faster. Which, honestly, I think they should have done that. I also don't like that, of course, if your team is not pairing a long-range weapon, yeah, the sniper's gonna snipe you silly. Big time. I mean, I would have put something else on the list. I would have put No Mercy on this list, just because it's exclusive to PC in both on the PS3 and the PS4 version. But of course, that's mostly because it's since the No Mercy is a Left 4 Dead map, basically owned by Value. So probably makes sense why it's not on here. But it had to go for the console rules, so Heat Treat is on the list. Now we're basically to the halfway point. Covering at number 5 is going to be the armored transport heist. More specifically, the 5 of the regular transport heists, not the one with the train heist, the regular ones. And I can't really pick which heist out of the 5 to pick, so I pick all of them because they're literally the same goal, the same objective. A little more different, that is basically the location, but more importantly, how short it is, and the payout is crap. I mean, come on, this was supposed to be an inspiration from the 1995 film Heat, where it borrows the same thing from the film, where they have a semi truck and basically pulled a armored truck and basically push it off the road and ram it out of it and able to get the content inside. What makes it less enjoyable is it's just so short, like I said. Nothing really happened special going on. Of course, this is where people use a lot for crime spree, but also in trying to go inside for the loot, it just feels very dull. Sure, you get gold, money, and sometimes jewelry. Sometimes you get blueprints, but the blueprints are now completely useless because you can just now play the train heist as a standalone heist with no drawbacks. I mean, but I had to be a little bit, a little bit not rough with this one because after all, this was the first paid heist in Payday 2, and probably the only ever time this was a paid heist for the PS3 version, as well as Xbox 360. And I also don't like the fact they also include objectives of terms of escape. You need to escape, which no, they kind of throw away that shit because it was a cool mechanic with the whole escape, but the sad thing about it is a lot of people seem to dislike it now because they just want to just beat the heist, especially how very important it is to beat this heist, only for it to, oh, You had to do one more thing before you make your payday. Also, certain maps, if you're playing this on DSOD, which I was struggling with the AI, of course you're better off with 4 players to do this, or at least people who are coordinated, especially that brings safe charges and saws to complete the job ejectors faster. And that's really quite, quick and disappointing at the same time. It's not really much of a challenge anymore if you know how it works. It basically removes the big challenge of basically you got everything done and you just GTFO. That's literally this basically simulator is. It's essentially a Ukraine job, except you're under a contract for Bane. I would like to see. I really don't like the payout to be so bad as well. Especially that the mission bags you get, not additional loot, are lower compared to the additional. So if you're not going for additional loot, your payout is so small, you're better off just doing the diamond store. At number 4 is Goat Simulator. What, you expect this to be number 1? Well, I do hate this heist and the name and the collaboration that Overkill had with Coffee Stain. Now, let's go over it. It's a 2-day heist, but let's go over day 1 first. I do like the map design for day 1, but it's just a shitty scavenger hunt design for searching for these freaking these animals that are basically animal of Satan, which are called goats. And they're not the freaking goats. The only people who are actual freaking goats is the people I play with that are better at this game than the actual these goats themselves. It's just why? The whole this I just don't know where to start with this heist. It's just so random, like everywhere. Of course, it's definitely an open map, especially if you play around in the center area, where you have at least buildings and alleyways to take cover. The main issue I have with day 1 is just, oh, the objective is just everywhere. It's just not that helpful. Plus, you only have the Longfellow to carry 4 goats. So, I do like the fact this game, or at least the 2 days for this heist, this is where gyro mechanics becomes very important. But at the same time, if you try and split up, it's very risky to do because you're basically put yourself and your teammates at danger. Especially if you're trying to move across the map. It just makes it much more challenging. As for day 2, well, I do like the way you had to escape the heist, or at least beat the heist. The problem is still the same thing. You're dealing with goats, and at the end of the objective, when you're finally reached the security checkpoint where you had to go and open the bridge, the shelters, for some reason, open up automatically once you press the button, which shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't. It doesn't make sense. This game, or for this case, this heist, really don't like the player to be in cover a lot, and it really kills the pace. It's just really quite awful heist. You know, this actually would make a better heist if the ejector wasn't involved with goats. I think for day 1 would have been best to make like a sort of survival mode, like the escape, but make it survive a number of waves before you can actually reach the extraction point. So you had to survive on your own because you have a little bit of resources, and you just had to survive out in a bigger territory. This I would get behind. This will be actually unique to the game of mechanics. It makes it more interesting. As for day 2, well, I do like the way you have to escape, like I said, but I don't like the setting where you go inside a country, basically in next to a barn or a farm. It really doesn't fit well. Also, it doesn't play well with DSOD, so I probably won't expect this to complete this on DSOD on PC anytime soon because it's just too much to ask, especially the way they're open on the with the map and the evolving with ghosts, which, oh god, the ghosts are just moving them everywhere. It's just so annoying. And okay, I didn't see it. I don't give a damn. So it probably makes you wonder if Goat Simulator is not your worst heist of all time. What the hell is the other free then? Well, let's get into it. Taking number 3 for the third medal, it is Prison Nightmare. Oh boy, where do I even begin with this one? It's probably usually since I normally play a lot DSOD with this one. You can see here, I only complete 11. I just not that fun with this heist. Mainly just due to the spawn point at the beginning. I also don't like the fact that it's just brutal, in my opinion. And not only that, it's just in terms of the whole infinite loot. I don't like that. I can't really get much out of it if you're not really coordinating well with a teammate, and if you're playing with the AI. It's definitely try and secure plenty of loot as you can. I also probably didn't like it because there's a certain achievement that you have to complete by essentially reach the train cars in 4 minutes and 44 seconds, which is a bit too much for me to go for. And also the whole 15 key card where you're supposed to secure the 15 key cards in one game without going custody. It's actually hard to find because, or actually hard to do because the game doesn't even give you it automatically right away in game. So you have to guess it if you do it in game, which sucks, and I'm only going to show it to you at the end. Also, this is pretty damn short, and honestly the payout is probably not worth it, and it just would have been, I mean, I say not worth it because what if you go down for like 2 or 3 hours of this heist only for your progress to be lost, and I hate that fact. However, there are more of this time to come with this infinite loot heist on the list, and oh, funny enough, speaking of it, here's the next one. Coming for number 2 and a runner-up for the silver trash can medal, or garbage can medal, it is Lab Rats. I have no clue what they were thinking with this heist as a release, and honestly, that's one of the few things I hate, is just the headless dozer. I just really despise those guys, but not as much as this tire map itself. You're basically playing a more shrunk down version of Rats or Cook-Off, except you're playing literally on the table of the meth lab, which sounds interesting, and plus it feels like I'm playing, well, Rats Day 2, and sadly you can't fall off, which I would love to explore more around. However, the one thing I don't like is that you fall a lot, and I'm probably going to show you an example that even on DSOD, if you land on a towel, you will go down. So let me just show you. Okay, never mind. I don't know why, sometimes it randomly does that shit. But not only that, it's just the way you had to go up, and you had to balance yourself like on a sort of beam or wire to cross. And it doesn't help that people are spawning, or the cops spawning from the side of the tables and just shooting you down while you have no cover up there whatsoever. And also, people can get very confusing when trying to place the mythic ingredients in order, because this is very important right here. Because if you put in the wrong ingredient in the right order, or if you place the right ingredient but in the wrong order, you're gonna blow up the lab. And not only that, you have to smash the myth to break into tiny pieces and throw it off, and the payout is not that great compared to a regular myth. And is that a cloaker? Oh no, this is the dude. What the oh my god. And I guess people would like to clip through things. I guess that's one thing you can add. But other than that, it's just a shitty heist to do. And this is usually the ultimate spot you had to hide. At least wait for Salt to go over, but it doesn't seem to be the best option, because they do climb up here as well. And snipers are basically your BITCH in this. And there's nothing else good with this heist at all. I mean, once you just make your first batch, I don't think anyone, and I mean anyone, had decide to make a second batch in this god awful heist that you had to climb up like a mountain. For what? Only to be fall all the way down dead again, break more bones, break body parts, and start all over and wasting all that precious time that you could have used for maybe another heist. Well, that's not the worst out of the list. Well, sadly enough, this is not the worst one. So what the hell is my worst one in Payday 2 history? Before we get to the number one pick, I'm gonna say a few honorable mentions. The first one we have is the Meltdown. So it's essentially a loud version of Shadow Raid, but much worse. Especially if you're trying to get at least the warheads out of the warehouse. And sadly, when you try to go out there, you're gonna meet it with dozers, tasers, cloakers, and snipers. And you had to drive a long way. Of course, this is where driving mechanic is probably used very importantly. But this is probably the second heist where people had to get used to driving mechanics, especially with forklifts and the Longfellow. And it didn't help that if your vehicle gets stuck by being pinned down by a SWAT turret, you had to repair it in a open field. However, this one is not making it to the list because I still like it, because at least it had some, at least it's Shadow Raid feel to it, just the map. But other than that, it's just it just feels like a waiting pin down simulator. The next honorable mention, which I should have had on the list, was Biker Heist. But like I said, it's just so hard to pick for all these worst ones in the list. But the Biker Heist is definitely up there, especially for day 1 and 2. For day 1, I think I like the way the map looked. The size is perfect. What's not perfect is the objectives, especially you have a SWAT turret right next to you have to defend Mike the mechanic. And also they do a lot of damage, just like you do in Last Deal and Brooklyn Bank. And of course, this is one of the few times where playing with AI doesn't work 99% of the time, which sucks. And as for day 2 for the train heist, which is of course a moving train heist, I don't like the fact that you have to face a biker chick. Not only that, she has lots of health, and also a medic can heal her. Even though they're both fighting two opposing forces, the medic will heal her. I've seen that happening. I think that was a bug. I don't know. They patched it, But that triggered me the most, and also I don't like that you can actually complete day 2 very quickly, and also a lot of people say that day 2 for the biker heist is best for crime spree. Well, in the earlier games, yes, but at very high, like maybe 30,000 or even 100,000 crime spree, avoid day 2 as a plague, especially any objective that involves killing a target, a VIP, or a HVT, which is high value target. The next honorable mention is Brooklyn 1010. I don't like whatsoever in terms of the way you play in the map. You play certain parts of the area and not the whole map, which really kills it for me. Where once you move on to the next objective, you move on to the next area, but you can't go back for the other previous area. That's where you buy your assets, and if your teammates go down there and there's no way to get to them, they're basically screwed and get in custody. I also don't like the fact that Tyrone takes so long to do his objectives, so long, especially when you're trying to get to the extraction point. This guy needs to work, need to do some cardio. And I think Dragon will be the perfect man for him to keep Tyrone in physical shape. And the last honorable mention I have is going to be Birth of Sky. Oh my god, where do I begin with? Yes, I do love the intro that you're literally smuggled into a plane and you get the money out and flying out in the sky and you literally skydive. Probably one of the best moments in Payday 2 history. But that alone is still does make a cut to make it still being mentioned or honorable mentioned for the worst heist. Because if you take too long in this heist, you are punished by having more snipers on the rooftops. And also, it's such an open field in terms of area. And also, few locations where the money pallet lands, it comes in one of the worst spots. Especially if you get it on top of a truck with literally no cover but the pellets themselves, but doesn't cover all sides. It also didn't help that some of the area in that small town has been reused assets from previous heists. The whole warehouse thing, it's similar to Election Day. And the car shop is literally, well, from Car Shop. And also the little dinosaur on top of the gas station is the same one from Hotline Miami. The only original map I can see here is the diner, and that's basically it. Also, the objective to fight in the sewers is also pretty cancerous, especially if you have 3 Skulldozer as opposed to 3 shields and 1 Skulldozer. But they did not make the #1 list, so they able to get some breeder. Now I'm gonna cover up what is the most god awful heist ever appear in systems of Payday 2. And finally, for #1, for taking not so shiny fool's gold medal should have been deleted out of existence, is Safe House Nightmare. And just for the sake of it, I am not even going to place the drill because I don't feel like playing for this heist. The reason it's so bad is the map is way too small and the payout is literally pathetic. Another thing I don't like about this is, well, it's just that you get 2 freaking enemies in this one. You get dozers and cloakers, which it probably makes the map at least more personality, but to me, it makes that personality avoidable. Another thing I really don't like is a never-ending police assault, just like the Biker Heist Day 2, where if you get in custody, guess what? You're screwed. I think there's a rare occasion that you can actually get a civilian tied down, but that's such a rare thing. It happened to me once, but I don't think it happened again. Also, in the moment when you place down the drill, you want to have drill skills. It is so annoying to have a dozer or cloaker kick the shit out of this drill, and you're just begging for RNG God to restart the drill automatically, and it didn't work, and it makes you reset. And this is probably the only heist I ever gonna ride the Kingpin perk deck with. That's right, since I don't have to deal with green dozer in this one, I can actually shit on the headless dozers with the Kingpin perk deck. And as for the cloakers, well, I could just ding dong their freaking skulls because they have a high headshot multiplier. The second highest headshot multiplier, only behind the dozer. And honestly, it's just a freaking shitty map. And to me, this map sucks, or at least this heist sucks. Without a shadow of a doubt, the worst heist Overkill has ever made. Now I know that a lot of people give shits on Goat Simulator. However, at least that heist was an actual heist. It didn't basically reskin itself and make it, well, now a playable thing. Like, this stupid nightmare. Like, it's just so bad. I just can't see the witness myself playing this shitty game, or this shitty map. I also didn't like it that, oh, save my money. I'm saving 4 monies in bundles, but not the entire money outside of it. I mean, I'm guessing it's just a heister's actual nightmare, but, you know, thank God it's just non-canon. And I'm grateful for that shit. But yeah, I really despise it, especially where most skills don't really seem to work. And you're basically forced to run the probably most property of skills. Of course, with drill skills, which is no brainer. And also, your teammates can kill you the most. Especially if you try to jump, guess what? You get electrocuted. But that's very random. But it's come with the rocket launchers, especially the M202 rocket launcher or Commando. They will blast the shit out of your teammates for no reason, and they did it unintentionally because they keep jumping up. Like they need to jump up, like they're itching for their head to scratch on a ceiling, and would have bumped their head, would have hurt their, would have given a little bruise. But no, they just had to shoot it with a rocket launcher. And it just doesn't help that I wish there was more ways to use the weapons, which I try to do. Hell, I would try even come close enough to try and beat this heist solo without AIs. The only hard part is for me to secure and escort the loot. That was the hard part. And another thing I really hate the most before I forget. What was the thing? I'm trying to think. What was the thing I hate the most too? I don't know. But the fact is, I just really hate this heist the most. And it's just not that fun. So, yep, that is basically my top 10 worst list of Payday 2. Thank you for watching, everyone. Until next time, farewell and have a wonderful day, everyone. And hope you have good dreams and never dream of this heist. Ever.